Hey guys, welcome back to Keys of the Cosmos. I know it's been a while, so I thought I'd sort of just do a catch-up video featuring sort of my collection of telescopes here, the state of the collection, where I'm down to. There's been quite a, not a major, but somewhat of a purge, and I thought I'd sort of update you, and then based on that, where I sort of looking to do in the future with regards to astrophotography and with my equipment. So I thought I'd just do a sort of a catch-up video and update you on what's been going on. So as I mentioned, I've had a bit of a purge. I did a video, I don't know, probably last year. It was probably spring of last year, early summer, which was sort of my telescope story, and I named it 0 to 100 quick because you know me, I get into a hobby and I go dive right into it, and I was sort of making fun of myself, but also to show you what I had at that point. So as you can see, there's a couple of those telescopes that are missing. I've gotten rid of a couple. And so first of all, the ones I got rid of, well, you remember in that video I had my SharpStar 76mm, and I had mentioned in that video that I was planning to get rid of that. It was a little bit redundant at the time, especially I had the RedCat 51, so if we're talking in terms of focal length, that has 250mm. The SharpStar had, with the reducer, about 349, I think, 345. And then I had gotten the Takahashi, which doesn't have a reducer, it has a flattener, but it's a 1.01, so it doesn't really change the focal length. So that has about 450. So I had 250, 350, and 450 to keep it simple. So it was obviously a little bit redundant. You don't need, that telescope's that close in focal length. So I got rid of the SharpStar. It was an amazing telescope. I loved it. I would recommend it to anyone, especially if you're just getting into the hobby. This SharpStar 76 is a good size. You can shoot wide field. If you spend some time on a target, you can crop in and still get nice details. So awesome telescope, but it went to a good home. Since then, I've also gotten rid of my RedCat 51, and that one I'm a little bit mixed on feelings. It had been sitting for quite some time. I hadn't used it, I would say probably close to a year. And so, the reality is that we're living in expensive times, interest rates skyrocketing. We did a minor renovation in our place. Just in general, I needed to free up some money and I had a lot sitting here. So I ended up getting rid of the RedCat 51. I'm not going to say I regret it, but if there's one that I wish I could have kept, that probably is it. Only because, it's first of all, it's an amazing telescope. It's very good quality. That Petzval design, you shoot some great images with it. And it's so small, it's so easy to take with you anywhere, whereas these are a little bit more difficult. But the reason I say that if there's one I regret, it would be that one. It's because I mentioned I had a lot of redundancy. Now I have a bit of a gap. So just to sort of go through what I have now, I have my Edge HD. This is the 8-inch. Now obviously that's my big boy. It's something like, without a reducer, 2030 millimeters of focal length. So it's a lot. Even with reducer, it's like 1500. So that's obviously for very small objects, planetary. That's what that's for. And it serves its purpose nicely. Also, of course, visual as well. Next, I have one of my favorites here, my Explore Scientific ED127. Now I have my 0.7 reducer on this, so it's somewhere around 639, 640 millimeters of focal length. So that's a great, you can call that maybe on the lower end of like sort of the bigger scopes, especially with the reducer, but that's a great sort of focal length. You can go for smaller nebula, bigger galaxies, not the biggest, but some of the medium to bigger ones. And this does a great job. I pair it with the ZWO ASI 533 MC Pro. That nice square sensor gives you a crop view. With this telescope, they work together amazing. And I love this setup. This is definitely one of my go-tos. Then next I have my Takahashi, my FSQ 85 EDX. This is definitely my best quality scope, most expensive. And that was sort of my dream scope that I was fortunate enough to be able to get. I combined that with my ZWO ASI 294 MC Pro. So that's more a square sensor, a little bit different field of view. And this one with the 1.01 flattener, as I mentioned, is about 450 millimeters. So I got, say, between 1500 and 2000 with this scope, 650 with this one, 640 with this one, and 450, and then it goes all the way down. My fourth little scope there, that's my Askar FMA 180. So that's, as per the name, 180 millimeters of focal length. So I go from 180 to 450. So now there is definitely a gap, and that comes into play I mean, I mentioned that my Redcat was sitting, and obviously I wasn't using it a ton, but you know, I haven't shot something like Andromeda in a while. Here was my original image of Andromeda, which I was very proud of, and I'm still am proud of it, given that it was like 60-second exposures. I think I was even using my DSLR. I'd have to look to see if that's true, but I shot that with my little star tracker, and at the time I was very happy with it, and I'm still, like I mentioned, proud of it. But it's definitely time for an updated one. I won't be shooting it this year, but most likely next year. So the question is, what do I use? You see that Redcat was perfect. I could think as well of like Elephant's Trunk, IC1396, the entire region. That's a big nebulae. A little bit too big for these three, I would say. But my Askar would do it, but again, I have to crop. So, and going back to Andromeda, like that's definitely our biggest galaxy out there. It's our closest neighbor. It's something like 5 full moons in the sky. So I used astronomy tools to show you here what the field of view would be like. Now you can use Stellarium. It's probably much better even and more comprehensive. Probably even the ASI Air can help you plan. But this is astronomy tools is the one I've always been using. It's great for planning, you know, what target you want to shoot, and then sort of planning which telescope works best with that, with whatever camera you're using. So with my Takahashi, with the 294 MC Pro, this is the field of view Andromeda. You can see it fits, but it's super tight. A little bit too tight for you know, comfort for me. Like if there's any image drift or anything through the night, you know, it may be a little bit, I'm already cutting a little bit off. It might just be a little bit too tight. So I could just shoot it, you know, cropped in. Or if I want to shoot it now, I have to use my Askar, and that's going to be a lot more wide field. Now, there's nothing wrong, of course, with shooting a wide field, and if I spend enough time, integration time, I can always crop in. But it would have been nice to have my, you know, Redcat 51. That just frames it up perfectly. You don't need to worry so much. It gives you enough room that you can still crop in. So, I mean, obviously I'm being picky. There's other objects as well that it works great for. There's some big nebulae out there that are great for the Redcat. So it does limit me a little bit, but like I said, the reality is it's to have 6 scopes is kind of ridiculous, and I can make it work with these 4. But I do miss that Redcat. It was my very first one, my first real telescope that I bought, and I loved it. You know, some of my fondest memories were using that, sort of learning this hobby. And like I said, it's such a great little scope that you can just take with you if you like to, you know, go out into the field and shoot under dark skies or whatever. I'll definitely miss it. But this is what I have now. I just want to say I'm very happy with all 4 of these. The Askar I really haven't used much. I have to admit, I think I've shot 2 targets with it. But it is great, 180 millimeters. It's quite wide field. It's great for like really big things, or shooting maybe 2 nebulae that are close together. Sometimes you can get both of them in. Something like, say, Orion and the Horsehead, maybe that would fit depending on the camera you're using. You know, something like that. There's a whole variety of things that you could shoot with it, but it's also good for more like landscape, astrophotography. Maybe, you know, getting like the Milky Way with a little bit of landscape there as well. But more that would be a camera lens. Now I should mention I do have a camera lens as well, which I've never used. I think it's a 35 millimeter that I bought an adapter, and it can connect to one of my ZWO ASI cameras. So I do plan to use that as well this winter, maybe for shooting like the entire Orion constellation. That's something I've always had a goal of doing. So I'm hoping to do that this winter. But I would like to use the Askar a little bit more. But I'm not going to get rid of it. It really wasn't that expensive. It's got multiple uses. It can be used as a guide scope. Like I said, it's just not worth getting rid of at this point. So I'm going to keep that as well. But these 2 in particular, I really love. These are my go-to for deep sky. The Edge HD I haven't really used for deep sky. I've just been lazy. Typical me. I do have the reducer for it. It's pretty much could be ready to go for deep sky, but I've been using this ED127 so much for that. I used it all last year, and it was great. Now, if you want to go for really small stuff, like say like the Ring Nebula, or like some of those smaller galaxies out there, and you want to get a lot of detail, this is definitely the way to go. You know, like I said, with the reducer, 1500 millimeters of focal length, that'll get you right in there. Whereas this one at 650, 640, it will struggle a little with those really small things, and I really wouldn't bother shooting something like the Ring Nebula with this. That's just me. Not that you can't, but if you want to get a lot of detail, this is going to struggle a little bit. But this will be perfect. So I'm hoping, we'll see, to get some deep sky done with this. But as I mentioned earlier, I do love using it for planetary. I hope to shoot to image Jupiter, because that's coming up to opposition soon. So hopefully I'll be pulling this out again and getting an improved picture from last year on Jupiter. But the goal is to use it for deep sky at some point. And the odd time, very odd time these days, I do use it for visual astronomy. I don't do much of that these days, but the odd time that I do want to pull it out, it's great to, you know, take a peek at some of the planets. And this is such a great scope for that. So these 3 scopes in particular, I'm very happy with. Any of them are great if you're considering them. I've done reviews, particular on these 2 already, and you know, if you're looking or interested in these 2 scopes, then you might want to check those videos out. Hopefully you can learn a little bit and help you make a decision. But this is where I'm at right now. I'm happy. And I've gotten rid of some other stuff as well. I just had way too much stuff in general. Like you sort of buy things and then you kind of go a different direction. So as I mentioned, it's been a little bit easier to sell recently. It's getting harder now again because stuff has become available, but for the longest time there just wasn't a lot of stock out there. So it was pretty easy to sell and not really lose much money on stuff. But going forward, what do I want to get into, or what direction do I want to go? Well, I'm definitely not going to be getting a new telescope or anything like that, but I may go into mono. I know I've mentioned that before. It is a lot more. My biggest thing with mono is it's the best way to do astrophotography, no doubt. It's the cleanest data. It's the most accurate when it comes to colors and all that. And it's great because you can oftentimes shoot on like a full moon, because it's just very narrow band filters that you're using. But the problem is you need a lot of time, and time is hard to come by these days. And not only that, but you know, the weather has been so unpredictable that it's hard to get enough time on targets. And mono, you need to spend time with each of those filters in order to really do it justice. So that's the only thing holding me back, but it is sort of in the back of my mind that maybe next year for nebula season I'll start getting into mono, but we'll see. But at this point I'm happy. I got my go-tos that are always set up with the camera already on them, so I can just, you know, load them onto my mounts and I'm ready to go. Now that in mind, I still have my 2 mounts that I've been using now for quite some time, both Ioptron, my CEM26 EC and my CEM40 EC. I love those 2 mounts. You know, I've done videos on those 2, had my issues, but right now they're both working well. So I'm happy with that. And they definitely cover any of these telescopes. Depending which one I'm using, I'll put it on the smaller mount or the bigger one. But yeah, right now I'm happy with my equipment. There's little things I still want to do. I still got to put the EAF, the electronic focuser, on this Takahashi. I bought it, but again, I'm lazy and I haven't got around to installing it, but one day I will. And I still got to get guiding going on this one as well, my Explorer Scientific. So that's, again, just been so lazy. But I hope to do that and do a video on it, because although I do a lot of unguided and my mounts do a great job, it obviously is better to guide. So hopefully that's something I'll be able to fix and work out in the near future and do a video on that as well. But there it is, guys. This is the state of my collection. It's been a bit of a purge, a much needed one, no doubt. But hopefully this catches you up, and hope that things are going well with you, that you're getting some great images and some good weather. And hopefully we have a good fall season. Be able to get some of that fall nebulae, and then of course moving into galaxy season, and hopefully we'll get some clear skies for that. But thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.